Let's repeat that part. Sing with me. Now this is the second part. It goes up. Try that with me. Back to the first part. Let's do that first part one more time. Second part. One last time.
Welcome everyone. We are so happy to have everyone here today. We're so honored that you've chosen to share your time with us. Today we'll be talking about shamanic journeying. We'll be teaching the skill of shamanic journeying, and we'll be doing it through the lens of the ancient Hebrews, that culture and and tradition, those spiritual tools. So it'll be, even for those of you who have done shamanic journeying, who know that skill, it should be some new perspective and tools, hopefully. I'm being told to speak a little bit louder, so I'll do my best to raise the volume. My name is Miriam Katz. I am a shamanic healer, and together with Rabbi Aaron, we are leading this effort to excavate the shamanic roots of Judaism, of the ancient Hebrews, and we really feel that this is a technology that will benefit anyone who feels called to it. And so we welcome everyone. And in terms of what I love about this particular work and about shamanic journeying in particular, is, for me, it's a tool of empowerment. This is a way, I have a teacher, Sandra Ingerman, who's one of the foremost teachers of shamanism in the world today, and she calls shamanic journeying the path of direct revelation, meaning that this is a tool that you can use to connect directly with spirit. And for me, that's what makes it most valuable, that this is kind of egalitarian. It is available to anyone who chooses to learn it. And all you need is a drumming track, which at this point is pretty much available to anyone who has internet access or, you know, a drum or a rattle. And so we'll have some fun playing with this. And for me, to see the difference in people when they are able to connect directly in with spirit is tremendously empowering, to see how they are better able to trust their own intuition, to see how they're able to tap into tools of self-healing is really powerful for me. So again, I thank you all for being here today, because I enjoy this work so much, and this point of connection.
And just to introduce myself, I was not always a rabbi. I was initially a wildlife ecologist and environmental educator, and I was always a seeker, seeking knowledge or experience of the divine by spending time in nature, observing nature. And I studied also indigenous and native traditions in North America, and I went to Australia, studied there as well. And I began learning shamanic journeying in college from a teacher who studied under Malcolm Ringwald at the Tracker School in New Jersey. And I went on some vision quests, and eventually I heard the call to reawaken my own ancestral traditions after kind of going around the bases, kind of came back home, like in baseball. And so today I'm a rabbi at a synagogue who lives on a property with goats and chickens. I take my goats for walks in the woods around the property, and I've always seen myself as a bridge between worlds, helping usher people into new places. I love to use song and chant to help people find their voice, and I've dedicated my life to reawakening the earth-based roots of Judaism, and also especially welcoming in people who are not from a Jewish background, because I feel like these are really traditions that are meant to be shared with everyone, with the whole world, and many of them are universal. But it's really nice to see the flavor of the ancient Israelite variety. So I just want to share with you some Jewish / ancient Israelite perspectives on this tradition, since we're kind of framing it in that, although of course it's shamanic journeying is a universal tradition. There's countless examples in the Bible, right? We have Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, all the prophets. King Solomon was known for journeying, flying on the back of a white eagle. The Merkava mystics, the Kabbalists in the circle of the Ari, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, the Hasidic masters in the circle of the Baal Shem Tov. You don't have to know all these people I'm mentioning, but just know that by saying all these names, I'm saying that this is something real that is happening. It's a continuous tradition in the ancient Israelite tradition and into the Jewish tradition. They were masters of ascent and descent, ascending to upper realms to witness angels singing and dancing before the divine chariot. And they also descended to Sheol, the lower world, using the prophetic practice from the prophets of Nifilat Apayim, which is falling on the face, kind of lying down on the ground with your forearm supporting you, or on a table if you're sitting at a table. They used to do this to go descend to the lower world, and also practice shamanic journeying through dreaming. We have a lot of record of ancient Israelites and Jewish mystics doing this sort of thing. So since we're journeying to our power animals today, I want to just highlight a few examples of the ancient Israelite relationship to animals, which is unique. So first we have the 12 tribes. You may know about the symbols that each of the tribes have, and that was kind of a zodiac unto itself. But each of the symbols was from a blessing that their forefathers received from Jacob. And it was a totem animal or an aspect of nature that was given to them. Each of the 12 tribes, lion, deer, wolf, snake, donkey, they each had different symbols. The Jewish people are from the tribe of Judah, which is the lion. That's the lion is the symbol for the tribe of Judah. I'm from the tribe of Levi, which is another one of the tribes of Israel, and they're the priests and the musicians. And unfortunately, we've lost record of the other 10 tribes, but I believe that if you're not Jewish but you're interested in these traditions, maybe you're here because your ancestors were from the lost tribes. King Solomon was legendary for his knowing the language of nature, the language of the birds, the language of the trees and the winds. According to the Midrash, he ordered eagles to protect his father's body after David died. And he was, like I said before, he would ride this white eagle. He would sail on a throne of light that was placed on the eagle, and it brought him to all kinds of places. I won't tell you the stories, but we'll share them with you another time maybe. There were animal faces, feet, and wings in all of when prophets had visions of the angels, there were lots of animal parts that made up the bodies of the angels, including the Chayot HaKodesh, which were really important animals in Ezekiel's vision, where he witnesses the divine chariot, and sort of just beneath the divine chariot, there is this fiery center in a cloud where there was 4 creatures, and each being had 4 faces. The face of a human going in one direction, a lion, an ox, and an eagle. And so each angel had one rigid leg that ended in a split hoof, which is like a kosher animal. So the nefesh, the life force of all animals, and really humans included, is said to emanate from these beings. So this hybrid animal-human nature of the angels is an expression of our relationship between humans and animals in the spiritual realm. And of course, our ancestors were also shepherds. And so that meant that kosher herd animals were really the central totem animals for their rituals. The parchment that the Torah is written on is kosher animal skin. When we stand in prayer, we stand with our feet together like one split hoof, to be like one of those animals, or to be like the angel, really the angels. We wear a wool talit. We wrap ourselves in the fur of sheep, basically, and wrap ourselves in the skin of kosher animals. That's tefillin. It's another tradition that goes back to Moses. You don't have to know what all these things are. I'm just giving you examples. But the one that's the most easy to show you right now is the horn of the ram, which as a Jewish person, I always felt a connection to the ram, but I had an especially powerful experience one time at a vision quest, where this vision of a white ram with brilliant horns of light streaming out of his head, and I saw that image superimposed on my own face, and I heard the sound of the shofar getting louder and louder and louder and louder. And so I later learned that was the sound that the Israelites heard when they encountered the divine at Mount Sinai. They heard the sound of the shofar. So we blow this during Rosh Hashanah, the new year in the fall, but really any time it can be blown. And the idea is it's like a wail that is breaking through, like a cry that's breaking through the walls and the klipot, the things that prevent us from having direct contact with our soul that is rooted in the source. So when I blow the shofar, I use it to do that. I can feel a rumble of energy coming up from my feet, from the earth, through my body, coalescing in my heart, and pouring upwards to the heavens through the shofar. And it kind of feels like I'm an extension of Mother Earth crying up to the Father Sky. So I'm going to blast the shofar for you, warning you if you have your headphones on. I think it'll be fine, but I want to blow the shofar as a prayer that the blast of the shofar of the ram medicine be with us to help break through the walls that prevent us from connecting with our true selves, with our soul, and with our power animal.
So we'll talk about the tool that we're going to learn today, the tool of shamanic journeying. So the most helpful way to move into this is to give you a sense of the cosmology of kind of what the world looks like that we're working with. So according to shamanic traditions around the world that were studied and analyzed by Michael Harner, who is an anthropologist and founded the Foundation for Shamanic Studies. the commonality with shamanic cosmologies is this idea of having three worlds. So there is a lower world, a middle world, and an upper world. And we live in the middle world. We live in the ordinary reality aspect of the middle world. There's also a non-ordinary reality aspect of the middle world. That means we can journey into the middle world and get a different perspective, more of a spiritual perspective on it. There's also the lower world, which is deep within the earth. And so this is associated with the feminine, divine feminine. It's associated with the animal realm and with plants. And so when most people begin journeying, they usually begin journeying to the lower world because it is considered a really safe world, a place where you can connect in with animal and plant teachers who are supportive and generally easy to navigate, pretty easy to access and navigate. And so it's considered also a safer form of shamanic journeying. When we're working with the world of spirit, it's kind of like working with the world out there, where you're going to meet some benevolent beings and there are also some less benevolent beings. And so we're guiding you through this in a way that is intended to make this safe and to expose you to benevolent beings. There's also the upper world. And so this is what we might associate with heaven, right? Like that's kind of the concept, but it's a little bit different. So it's moving up, it's up into the sky realm. And this is where we would connect in with ascended masters or teachers. We might connect in with angels. We might connect in with that infinite form of divinity, or various, maybe more traditionally masculine considered forms of divinity. And so in Judaism, there is, and in Kabbalah, there's a concept of having 50 different levels, of like 7 levels with seven sub-levels that you can access in the upper realms. And as Rabbi Aaron was saying, there are plenty of Kabbalists who have journeyed to these realms. Traditionally in Kabbalah and in Judaism, it's about connecting into, your merit, what you do in the world, doing enough commandments and treating people well and praying and things like this. And these are the ways that you earn access to these upper worlds and upper world teachers. But through shamanic journeying, we actually it's more egalitarian, it's more democratic, that everyone actually has access to these worlds if only they know the doorway in. And so we're going to teach you the doorway in today, at least to the lower world. And by the way, if people have any questions, they're welcome to pop them up on the chat, and I'm happy to address them. I want to make sure this is clear and accessible to everyone. So I'll give you a sense of how it'll work today. We will do a journey to the lower world. And the way that we do that is we find a point of access. So for many people, this might be a power spot that they have in nature, or that they had when they were little, maybe a place that you love to go and sit. And generally it's about imagining a hole into the ground. And so maybe it's the hole in a tree trunk. Maybe it is, kind of diving into the water and finding a hole at the bottom of the water. Maybe it's just a place that you love and envisioning a hole in the ground there. So it really doesn't matter. What does matter is that you have a clear intention and a clear picture of where it is that you're going to enter. And that you really pursue that and use that. Sometimes people hedge at the last minute and think of another place, and then they're like, get confused and lost and just don't do it. So it just matters that you persevere, that you have that hole. If you hit some sort of root or something, you can burrow through it, you can go around it. Use your creativity. This is working the imaginal realm. So you're using your imagination and your creativity to navigate whatever comes up. So generally you'll start burrowing down through a hole. Usually for people it looks like a tunnel. And you're moving down generally through darkness. And You keep doing that until you get to this space where you see the light. And then when you see the light, you follow that exit and you move out into the lower world. And the lower world looks like the natural aspects of our world, of our middle world. So you might see water, you might see, trees, you might see landscapes. What everyone sees is different. It also, depending on you, you might have your own particular map of what the lower world or the upper world looks like. So I have a friend who every time she goes to the lower world, it looks exactly the same, and she knows where to go and what to do. For me, it's always different, and I may always have different beings show up. In terms of what you're looking for in this particular journey is you're looking for your power animal. And so if you already have a power animal, you'll recognize them if you see them. If you don't, you're going to look for the animals that show up. And I'll just give a caveat that generally we're looking for non-insects. Insects tend to have different connotations with shamanic journeying and with spirit. And so aside from spider, who's a very clear helper and weaver, generally if you see an insect, you're going to want to keep going just from a sense of safety and kind of looking for that clear, secure power animal that you'll work with. So generally when you get to the lower world, you'll see a power animal or an animal show up, and you go up to them and you'll ask, are you my power animal? And they may say yes, and they may say no. If they say no, you can ask if they can guide you to your power animal. If they say yes, great, you've got a fit. They might say nothing. And so you can decide if you want to stay and interact with that being or not. A helpful tip is, in terms of what the imaginal world is and what the world of shamanic journeying is, this is also Sandra Ingerman who says this, that, it's the difference between a spectrum of experience with a daydream on one side of the spectrum and a night dream on the other side, and shamanic journeying in the middle. So in a daydream, you can imagine what you will say and what the other person will say, and you control the whole conversation, the whole dynamic. With a nighttime dream, unless you are, what is the word for that? Unless you're actively dreaming and you're using your conscious awareness to know that you're dreaming and to shift the nature of what's happening in the dream. Thank you, lucid dreaming. Unless you're lucid dreaming, you don't have control over what's happening, over what you're doing, over what other people are doing. In a shamanic journey, you are in control of what you're doing, what you're saying, how you're interacting, but not of what's coming back at you. So that's why it's hard to say if the animal that shows up or the being that shows up is going to answer you or not. Some people have very, they never spoke to me. And that doesn't mean it's not a valid experience. It just means there's something different to play here with and to feel into it on a different level. It's also important to know that a shamanic journey is guided by your own intuitive gifts, and that we all have different intuitive gifts. So there are some people who are, very frequent shamanic journeyers who don't hear things in their journeys, right? So they might feel things. They might also even not see things. So it's, you may have access to one sense, you may have access to multiple senses, but it's okay if you can't see anything, if you're just feeling your way around, just use your hands, let those be the guide. It's okay if you're only hearing things. It's okay if you can't hear anything. So sometimes just a sense, a knowing, a sense of understanding will drop in. Sometimes you're tuning into your emotions and you're using those as the predominant guide to tell you, do I feel safe with these beings? Is there love being transmitted? What is the message or the transmission that's happening between us? So know that can vary, and it might not look like what you think it will look like, and that's okay. Just work with what's showing up and feel into what's available to you, and that's your strongest bet. I'm trying to think if there's anything else about this. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple tips in terms of how we're going to work with the power animals in this particular visit. So one is also a beautiful teaching from Sandra Ingerman, which is when you meet your power animal, or any animal or being that you meet in the lower world to say, may I step into your field of energy? And this is a real sign of respect and the beginning of establishing a reciprocal relationship. And I found I'd been journeying for years before I ever heard that tip from her. And once I started using that tip, it really opened things up in a completely different way, where suddenly I could actually feel the energy in a really tangible way from the being. I could feel mutual respect and a deeper level of connectivity. So I really advise using this question, may I step into your field of energy? Another tip is we're going to learn how this being likes to be in relationship with you. And so asking them up front what kind of gifts or offerings they might like to receive is a really good way to build a relationship. So some of them will just, may not have opinions. I always bring chocolate. Chocolate is my favorite thing. And so I always offer chocolate when I'm on journeys and when I'm thanking beings that I'm working with, because it means something to me. There are some traditions where tobacco is given, or cornmeal, or an herb that is held, or food that is held sacred in your tradition. And so you can use your intuition, but also asking that being what they like to receive. The final question that I'll have you ask today is, how can we work together? And so, we all have different relationships with our power animals. They are, some power animals are meant to be guides, and so they help us with particular areas. So those of us who work as healers may have one or more guides, power animals that assist us with healing, that point out this needs to happen, or fulfill particular roles during a healing. Some of them will actually do healing on us directly, which is like one of the best things you could hope for, especially in a time when, people are thinking about how do I get healthier and more vital and more connected. Some of them are meant to give us a sense of comfort, of connection, of being held, or strength. And so Lauren's asking, if it does not feel safe or positive, do we just keep moving past the animal or being? And the answer is yes. Being respectful, you could leave an offering, but just keep going. You want it to feel safe. You want this to be a positive connection, and you never have to do anything that feels unsafe. And that includes if a power animal or a being were to say, ask you to do something and it doesn't feel right, you don't have to, okay? You can just be respectful, no thank you, just like in our ordinary reality. So thank you for asking that question. I'm trying to think if there's anything else about this. The reason I say animals or beings is sometimes you'll have other kinds of nature beings that'll show up. So if I was leading a journey to connect in with the spirit of a plant, so we have lots of plant teachers and plant medicines and master plant teachers. If I was leading a journey to connect with a plant, I would go to the lower world too. And so you might have a plant show up. And also know that the spirit that shows up may not bear resemblance to what they're supposed to be. So when I journeyed to the spirit of cacao, the cacao plant or tree, it didn't look like a cacao plant. It looked like, maybe something you would see in a mask, like an African mask. It just, they'll take on different types of forms sometimes. With animals, they tend to look like what you'll expect them to look like, at least when you first meet them. But you can also ask questions, ask clarifying questions. If your being is talking too quietly, you can ask them to speak up, just like you can ask me to speak up if my mic isn't loud enough, and I hope it is now. Yeah, so you can navigate. There are tools that you can use. You can always ask questions. If it's not clear what they're saying, ask them to clarify. One of the most frequent tools that shamanic practitioners use is to journey on things. And so if you come out of this journey with a sense of, I didn't really understand that, the recommendation I would give you is to journey on it. So to go back in and to ask for more clarity. And so whatever clarity you can get in this journey, great. And if you don't quite get there, you can always go back and ask for more. You're building a foundational relationship that you can turn back to, go back to get more. And it'll be, I mean, to me, this is an infinitely valuable toolkit. I mean, it's just like the sky's the limit in what you can do with it, which is why I'm so passionate about it. So I'll give you a sense of the mechanics of it, how it's going to work. So I'll be drumming. And I'll be drumming at that fast rate, repetitive rate. The purpose of this drumming is to shut off or kind of tone down the logical analytic mind. And that helps us to move more into the right brain, the creative brain that helps us to access mystical experience and deeper levels of trance. So I'll be doing that for 12 minutes. And then I will do a callback. So when I start doing the drumming, you'll find your space, your hole in nature. You'll go down, you'll journey down to the bottom. You'll go into the light, into the space that you come out, and you'll ask your animals these 3 questions. I will remind you what those 3 questions are, so you have it in your head when you go down. And then I'll do a call back when the journey is over. And the call back is me hitting it 7 times, hitting the drum 7 times for each of the 7 directions. And we'll cover that content a little bit more, more thoroughly in the Resourcing Ourself program, which we'll tell you about more later, but that's kind of deeper work. But it'll sound like this. So I'm drumming, and then I'll drum 7 times. And I'll do that 4 times for the 4 directions. Okay, so that's 3 out of the 4 times. So when you hear me start to do that, it means to retrace your steps back to where you came out and go back up. So you came out in some general place. You'll look for that opening again, and you'll go back up to our middle world. And then we'll come out and we will debrief. And so if you guys want to share your comments on the mic, on the video, that's welcome, your experience, or if you want to prefer to share them on the chat, that's welcome too. And if there are questions, we'll address those at that time too. Does the place you choose to start from have to be a place you've been before? No, it doesn't. It could be a place that you imagine. Just make sure it's a place in nature. Some people journey with the world's tree or even the tree of life. So some people envision a huge trunk at the center of the world, and they envision a hole in there or a doorway, and they go in, and then they start journeying down through the ground underneath it. And they might use that same trunk to climb up to the upper world for when an upper world journey is happening. Okay, so I'll remind you of the questions to ask when you go to the lower world. The first is, are you my power animal? And if it's a no, you can ask, can you help me, can you lead me to my power animal? They might say no, and you could just continue wherever you feel drawn to. The second is, may I step into your field of energy or your energy field? And the third is, how can I thank you, right? What offerings of gratitude can I give you? And I guess there's a fourth one, which is, how will we work together? And it's okay if you don't have all these questions with you, just work with what you have. They're out there now. So whatever is right will come to you when the time comes. There's no way to do this wrong. Okay? So we're going to get started. And I don't see any more questions. So I'll be drumming for 12 minutes, like I said. So you'll be going to the lower world. Oh, I forgot to tell you how to do this. So generally, when you're first journeying, you'll lie down. Some people will cover their eyes. Some people don't cover their eyes. There's also this Kabbalistic tool that's used, which Rabbi Aaron mentioned, called Nifilat Apayim. So if you're using that tool, you are lying down either in Superman pose, so like with your arms straight up and your legs straight back, prone on the ground, or you might be lying with your forehead on your arm, and that helps with kind of managing all the facial features that might get in the way.
Or seated at a table with your head on the table.
Oh, so that could be a good option. And for those who are experienced journeyers, sitting in your chair might work. And when you're really experienced as a journeyer, you might dance, you might kind of walk through the motions, act out the journey. And if you feel comfortable doing that now, trying that now, and you haven't journeyed before, go for it. There's no wrong way to journey. It's just easier. It tends to be easier for when you're starting out to lie down. So make sure your sound is on, because there'll be drumming. And happy trails. making your ways back to this space. And if you have a notebook nearby, you can write down some notes if you would like. And this is your time. When you come back, you are welcome to share your experience, who your power animal was, any questions or difficulties that might have come up along the way. I'm happy to field any questions, but we'd love to hear from you. One thing I didn't mention about power animals, well, it looks like a bunch of people are taking notes, so I'm just going to give you a minute to do that, and then I'll chime in. Okay, I'll say that, something about power animals is they tend to reflect different aspects of us. And if a shamanic practitioner were to retrieve a power animal for you, that would be called a power retrieval, because it is restoring aspects of your personal power that are linked to the power that that animal shares or carries. And there's this Jewish teaching through a midrash, which is like a story about the text that explains it, that says that because Adam, man, which is the same from the same root as Adama, which means earth, so man who came from earth, or human beings, because they were created after all the plants and all of the animals, they also carry all of the traits of the plants and the animals, or they have access to them. And so your power animal reflects a certain aspect of your individual power and personality. And so it can be really telling and interesting to connect in with your power animal to find out what that is. And so any brave souls who might want to report. So Prudy said, I did not see anything in the lower world, but I had a sense of a deer dancing to the drumming, and I was aware of a sour smell. So that's beautiful, using your senses and tuning into everything that's available to you. And so what you can do is you can journey to that deer. And so using your intention becomes your GPS. So you set your intention to go to this dancing deer the next time that you journey and see what comes up. Maybe next time you'll see them, or you'll be able to hear them, have a conversation, or have a knowing or an emotional sense of what the connection is here. So it's not always perfectly clear, especially as you begin to journey. But as you keep flexing that muscle and building that skill, you will connect more deeply. You'll be able to. And I know it seems like it may be a difficult thing, especially when you've had your first journey and it didn't feel like much. But I've seen people go through this progression of like, I don't know, what day was all black, I didn't see anything, to like, oh yeah, like I have such a deep connection with my power animal. I feel them everywhere I go. I see them, in the sky, or, in the landscape. And so power animals start to take on additional significance in your daily life, in your outer life, as you go out in the world and see them. So Lauren said a flower appeared before any animals, and that makes sense, right? So you can connect in with that flower, and I'm saying that makes sense because I'm aware that you have a connection with herbs, Lauren, who was my midwife, and I hold so much love for you. I'm so glad you're here and honored you're here. And so checking in with what kind of flower that is, what it looks like, you can ask for a name. And this flower may have appeared to be your plant ally. And flowers, plants are really powerful medicine for us for this time. And so are animals, but the qualities that they bring are different. And so if you have the interest and capacity to tune into plant beings, I highly recommend it. Carol saying, I came to a white goat who was playing at the waterfall. The message is not to be so serious, to play more now. And what a beautiful message. And that has value, I think, for everyone here, myself included. Playing it feeds the soul. You know, art feeds the soul. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. Any questions about challenges that came up in the journey? Feel free to share them. My power animal was a leopard, Carla. Yeah. Leopards are really powerful healers. And so let that be a sign to you. Also, as we're decoding power animals, what I encourage you to do is to think about what you know about that animal, you know, out in the world. How do they mate? How do they, you know, relate to family? How do they hunt? You know, what are the qualities that they bring? What do you think of when you think of them? And those are the qualities and characteristics that connect you to your power animal. And then beyond that, you can always Google it or look in books about power animals and their meanings, and you can get deeper. Also, asking your power animal directly what qualities they bring is the most powerful way to connect with them. And I'll teach more about really asking for these qualities and building your power through ongoing relationship with these animals as we move further into the material. And so Amanda had a giraffe who said, of course it's my animal because it can see farther than any other animal on the land. And again, that resonates because of my knowledge of you and your abilities as a seer. And Lauren saying a grandmother showed up towards the end. Is that possible that loved ones who have crossed over can show up? Yes, it is. So we tend to have these or to teach these clear demarcations of lower world, middle world to upper world. But the truth is there's a fine line between them, and there can be crossover. And also in many traditions, including the ancient Israelite tradition, the lower world is also a place of ancestors. It's called Sheol in Hebrew. And so it's completely appropriate to have ancestors show up, and we can teach you ways of working with those as well. And so I would love to talk more about all of these animals. And I also want to make myself available afterwards via email. You can always email me if you had questions that came up. But I want to issue an invitation to all of you to invite you to come and dive into this stuff deeper. Rabbi Aaron and I are going to be teaching a 7-week course called Resourcing Ourselves with Hebrew Shamanism. And we will be teaching the tools to empower yourself, to feel more part of a collective whole. An image that came up for me as I was thinking about the curriculum for this course is that of a hand, right? And many of us go throughout life feeling like we are a finger that is not part of a hand, that's kind of lost and by ourselves and trying to navigate this scary world. And what we're going to do through this 7-week course is to help us all to feel more a part of the whole that is the hand. So to connect in with the non-physical beings and support system that's always been there waiting for us to connect to it, to connect to other physical beings virtually who are also delving through this material. We'll be connecting to the earth more deeply, connecting to healing ourselves, connecting to our ancestors, our healed ancestors, those who are well in spirit, and to upper world beings, learning how to create a reciprocal relationship with them so that we can move deeper into our sense of being held and connected to spirit. So I encourage all of you to please join up. I'll post a link in the chat while Rabbi Aaron leads us out on the wings of a beautiful Niggun.
Just wanted to share with you also, this is the kudu shofar sound. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Aaron. Thank you, everyone who came. We are so honored that all of you showed up here today.
Keep visiting your power animal.
Absolutely. This is the beginning of a beautiful relationship. Keep it up. It's good work. Thank you.
I guess while people are signing off, I'll keep... All right, have a beautiful evening, everyone.